So, uh, I wanted to sit down with you because you are the youngest, most experienced film person I know.
Oh, that's an unfortunate statement about the cohort of filmmakers, you know.
No, no, no. I know plenty of young filmmakers. They just haven't been through the wars you've been through.
Okay, fair enough.
And so there's all this hubbub in the media about, young people in films and the movies are back and young people. And I just wanted to start with I have a bunch of questions for you, but let's just start with that one, which is like, like, do you think the theatrical business is living through some new golden age? Is that, because that's what the papers say.
I think that, the movie business is built on hype cycles. So I think hyping successful movies is a good thing for the movie business. And I, I think there's the shared community experience of sharing a story together in a dark room is kind of a universal long term, experience throughout the course of humanity. And I think that is going to survive, has survived multiple new technologies, and is surviving this wave of technology.
All
And
right.
I think
So
that that's what you see.
But
You know,
let's go back. I realized I jumped ahead without you telling, tell your story of from high school through now. Like when were you when did you become enamored with the movies and all? I mean, you've had all these jobs and you've built companies. I mean, you've done all this stuff.
okay. I started my trajectory in the movie business when I was 12 years old, and I read Truffaut's biography of Hitchcock. And I got at the University of Haifa Library because my dad was a professor there, and I was hanging out in the library, and I pulled this book out of the stacks, and I thought movie business was incredible. I spent a lot of my junior high school and high school years going to movie theaters, and I really wanted to be in movie business. And then got to eventually, I came out to LA. I cold called the CFO of Columbia Pictures, and I got a job as a junior finance guy. And I worked my way up to become vice chairman of the studio. In the course of that, I was responsible for securing the rights to Spider-Man for Sony. I negotiated a deal that continues to give Sony billions of dollars to this day. And so I negotiated that deal in 2000, 2001, and we sit here in the summer of 2026, and the film's already crossed $1 billion theatrically.
See,
Um,
I was gonna bet that this was gonna be the one that was a cold land. Like the numbers are spectacular and the hype is amazing.
and I think there's a reason why Spider-Man is such a resonant character. There's a whole bunch of reasons, but I think you saw it in the first execution. Sam Raimi related to Peter Parker. Sam Raimi told the story from Peter Parker's point of view, is like, I was a nerdy kid and I became a superhero, right? And Sam Raimi was like a nerdy kid who and became this preeminent director. And I think Tom Holland and Zendaya embody a high school dream that and are identifiable characters both as standalone characters and then as superheroes. I also think Spider-Man is a technology story. The film works because the piece of swinging through the streets is as believable as the relationship moments between the characters. And so it wasn't possible to tell the story well. And if you lived through the TV Spider-Man, where they basically showed him, climbing sideways and then tilted the camera, you know that it was once you believed what was going on physically, the character is so rich emotionally for the audience. The combination of the two continues to resonate in cross medium and across characters, and I think that, and that's going to your question, like the movie business, really well told IP. I mean, look, The Odyssey is a really well told piece of IP, going back to
We'll,
original telling of IP.
we'll
And
we'll get to the Odyssey in a moment. I have an Odyssey
so
question for sure.
so I feel that, you know, and I think the execution is great. I think Tom Holland is a fantastic Spider-Man, and this realization of the character really resonates with people.
So I don't know the date of this, and I should in terms of your career trajectory. But when did you first have the idea that there was going to be a community-based animation company? Like it was really early, right?
Yes, I was looking at it I saw what was going on in the game space where people were making mods of games and the community was essentially advancing the game and then people were playing it and I thought about applying that to production. And the first kind of inklings I had of that was like almost 20 years ago. And then I launched Mass Animation when I left Sony in like 2008. And that was, God help us, that I was launching on Facebook. I took the creative process and I made it transparent as an application on Facebook. And I built a community of creators on Facebook. And back then, there were maybe 50 million people on Facebook, and I built a community of 50,000 creators at Mass Animation. And we basically worked with people around the world to shape an animated short film.
What I love about that story is how somebody could walk out of the Sony offices and not take with them the arrogance of movie executive. Like, because look, my whole career is based on believing that real people tell great stories, but most people who were wearing the studio executive costume think real people should sit quietly and eat popcorn. And like for you to understand that there was power in the audience, I think was prescient as hell.
I don't know that it was prescient as much as, I was born on a kibbutz. I have kind of this community orientation to a lot of things. I mean, I think the kibbutz fails as a model for a lot of reasons, but it also was very successful in raising children. Um, in and I'm a big believer in community achievement. And actually, one of the things that's always drawn me to animation is what a collaborative process that is, and how many different people touch the product and impact the product. And so it's the opposite of an auteur filmmaking process. It's collaborative. It's a team creation experience.
I love the idea of creation as the kibbutz experience. I've never heard you say that. So let's jump to the Odyssey, which I should start by confessing I have not seen it because
Okay.
I want to see it in IMAX. And
Okay. So
and
you're waiting as a cinematic purist until you can get your slot. Okay. Good.
which looks like it's going to be fucking October.
Probably. Yeah.
I
People are
mean,
flying into Dubrovnik to see the film from other parts of Europe, right? I think that I think there's way too much emphasis on the projection experience and not enough emphasis on the storytelling. And I think the reason he's successful is he's a good storyteller, and I think he understands the power of this story, and he tells a very human version of it. And I think that he I don't think he tells a version that's very true to the book that I read, but I think he tells a version that's true to the version he wants to tell, which is Odysseus as an everyman going through a series of experiences. Um,
Elon's
so
going to fix that with a real version.
I would be willing to put money down now that Elon's version never even gets to 5 minutes, let alone full length feature, let alone release. So I think that AI production is still very much a work in process, and a lot of professionals are dedicating lots and lots of time to building that out. And it's going to be some time before you could realize a 3 hour movie in a way that the audience would find palatable.
Let's so what's fascinating about AI in the movie business in particular is that there is this great big community of kind of purists who are like, don't use AI, AI bad, AI will ruin everything. And then meanwhile, there's this massive community of people that are, some are using it for economic reasons, it's theoretically, and lots are using it for creative reasons. I've seen some really interesting AI. I've seen some really terrible AI. But
I think we have to move out of the binary discussion process. I think that AI use, like sexuality or gender preference, is a spectrum. And I think that it's ridiculous to me that the non-binary generation takes a binary view on AI, and that use of AI is a spectrum, and that what if you use it as a tool and it's human led and it's an aid to your creative process, then I think it's can be hugely contributory. And I think it could be hugely, and I'm biased. I've launched a story development platform which essentially functions as a writing partner in the room with you. It doesn't write for you. It is a tool to assist you. And I think that the AI will become a piece of lots and lots of components of the production process.
tell me
And
where your project is. Is there a URL? Can we see it? Can we play with it?
we're still in enterprise trials. We are working with some professional production companies and studios. And look, we had an Academy Award winning producer use our tool to analyze a project that was going into production. And using our notes process, he came up with a bunch of notes that he shared with the filmmaker. And so, did he rewrite the script with our tool? No. Did he use AI to produce the movie? No. He used AI to help him in his role as the producer to analyze what was working and not working in the story and make it better. And so I think that that's one component. And then I also think, to going back to successful cinema, and storytelling is a lot harder than people think. Telling a good story takes a lot of time and effort, and there's a lot of people who want to tell stories who don't have the expertise. And our tool is really helpful for people like that who have a vision of what they want to do but don't know how to beat out a character arc or develop a plot line. And I think that also, to your point of like, there's a lot of bad AI out there. There's a lot of bad AI out there because there's no character or dialogue or narrative in. It's a bunch of images strung together. And when you don't care about the images, it doesn't matter how great they look.
So I want to go back to the theatrical experience. I've read a bunch and I'm curious as to how if IMAX with its limited number of screens is and it's I don't even know what the tickets cost. Presumably you see what did you see it in?
I saw it in Dolby. I did not see it in IMAX. So
All right.
it was a more limited screen. It was rich audio. It was a rich image, but it wasn't fully realized in the filmmaker's vision.
And that was because you just didn't want to punch
I
your way
wanted,
into the
yeah, I wanted to see the movie when it came out, and I think ultimately, if the experience is completely dependent on you doing it um, in a specific format, then it's limited. And I think if ultimately people are going to be watching it on their phones, and the question is, does it hold together on their phones?
so
And it
I
holds
had
together on their phones if they care about the characters in the story, and it doesn't hold together if all they care about is the image.
so I had tickets to a PGA screening and it said 70 millimeter and I was like, no, I'm gonna wait for IMAX. And I canceled the PGA tickets and I regret that because I keep going back to the Sony big, IMAX in 68th Street, thinking, well,
right?
and like, yeah, there were two tickets midway into the theater, but they were like at 2 in the morning, for fuck's sake. I mean,
Well, I think it's wonderful that he's created an event. That's wonderful.
yeah,
And I think that's awesome. And I think that, it's show business, right? And it's wonderful that there's a show element that survives. Um, but I don't know that it's as significant to the movie industry as Backrooms or Obsession were, because that was a statement that there's a whole next generation of filmmakers that aren't waiting and that are already connecting with an audience directly, and they're going to shape the future of, theatrical storytelling.
Backrooms was amazing. It was a really good film. Really enjoyed it.
And so you go, okay, this, are we back in the 70s with, Scorsese and Coppola and Spielberg? I'm not sure, but it's not impossible.
All right, so the other physical experience is, let's talk about the Sphere.
Okay.
Haven't been,
Okay.
had
I
emotionally very mixed feelings about Wizard of Oz being whatever they did to it.
I haven't seen The Wizard of Oz. I have talked to a bunch of people who worked on it. I have seen a show with the Sphere. I think the Sphere is a phenomenal concert venue. Really fun concert venue.
What did you
And
see? What did you see there?
I saw U2 there, and they customized a lot of video around their experience, and they're U2, and they know how to play to a big audience. And it was awesome. I think that my own view is, if there's a if the Wizard of Oz is sustained through the Sphere, then it's a good thing. Period. If there are people who experience the Wizard of Oz for the first time that way, for the 15th time that way, it's still a good experience. And I'm not a purist on that level. I think that um, you I think if you reach out and connect with people that on that scale, with a story that's almost 100 years old, right? I think that's an incredible thing.
There was an
That's
article, maybe in the Wall Street Journal, maybe not, about the Sphere. And while his name was not in the article, it was a incredibly sharp knife takedown of Jimmy Dolan, essentially saying this thing has no economic footing. Um, it's just too damn expensive.
I think he's had the luxury of basically living off of daddy's dime his whole life. And so I don't think he's a person who I would trust to make rational economic choices, but that doesn't mean he didn't build something compelling. Whether or not it's economically viable is, I, that's
Yeah.
about whether or not he's able to raise capital against and sustain it. I,
Uh,
I,
I mean,
I,
it's interesting who you saw there, because I mean, U2 has done amazing multimedia work in all of their,
yes,
you know,
exactly.
I mean, they didn't go in and say, "Oh my God, it's a big, salad bowl over the theater. What are we gonna?" They knew exactly what they were going to do, and I'm sure it was spectacular. I wish I'd seen it.
Yeah. And I think that certain movies, if they're done properly, and look, I think they invested a lot of time and money in making The Wizard of Oz a satisfying experience. That's why people go. I mean, I kind of fundamentally go to scoreboard on stuff like this, which is like, if it wasn't good, people wouldn't continue going. Right? Like, people, it's expensive, and people go, so they must be having a good experience.
So let's go back to Gen Z for a second. Since they're not on this call, we can talk about them in the
Okay.
third person. Um, there is this phenomenon now where more and more people are watching things on their big screen and holding their phone in their hand. Um, and I am guilty of doing some of that. Although my wife and I were talking the other day about what storytelling is strong enough to actually make us pay attention to the story and not read our email. Um, I guess my question is, as someone who's been in the film business your whole life, is the reason why young people are gravitating towards second screen at the same time because Netflix has watered down the product so much that that it's not, you know,
I don't
who's
think you can blame one distribution medium for blaming, for a phenomenon that started, frankly, while Netflix was still not that dominant
yeah.
platform. I mean, people were asking you to, silence your phones and turn and not text during the movie 15 years ago. Um, I think that I think there's a whole host of factors. I think that there is a innate dopamine level satisfaction from short form interaction on your phone that is real and that is hard to separate from. And so I think it's less about the movies not holding their attention than their emotional engagement and satisfaction from their phone interaction is higher. And you may be doing email, right? But if they're texting with their friends and their friend is liking something that they posted, then they had a personal interaction that was deeper than what they were watching on the screen. So I think it's hard because I think that short form engagement is really real and meaningful, right? And I think that you have to acknowledge that. And then the question is, can you create experiences that are sufficient to overcome that? Or can you pull people in over the course of the story because, you know, they might be on their phone at the beginning, but halfway through they're hooked on your story and then they're really engaged. You know, I, again, going back to it's not a binary. I don't think that all short form interaction on your phone is bad. And I don't think all movies are good enough to merit 100% of your attention. Right. So there's kind of you have to acknowledge the limitations of both and then say, okay, but is this sustainable? And I go, yeah, I think it is sustainable. I think theater still exists and still draws in an audience and people pay a premium for the experience. And you go, and so the theatrical film experience will also sustain that. It may not be, it may be closer to the theater experience in terms of like it's less frequent part of people's lives and they're showing up on more of an event basis. And okay, but then what you define as an event may differ, right? Backrooms may be a Gen Z event, right? Versus, you know, Spider-Man may be a Gen Alpha event.
All right. Last question. Because you've been good at this now a couple of times. So get in a time machine and go forward. I won't make it an unreasonable number. 10 years. Well, where do you think visual storytelling will be in 10 years?
Um, I think video and the video experience is going to become more and more ubiquitous, and that AI is going to power a lot of high level storytelling that's not available to mass creators today. So I think what you'll see is an evolution from kind of the influencer creator world of kind of talking head interaction to more and more large scale storytelling by individuals. People will be making their own TV shows right and left. And the people who are good at it will build audiences and become, essentially showrunners of their own world. And I think we're moving towards more creation, not less, right? And that as AI shakes out and the tools become more stabilized and become more accessible, you'll see. I mean, I launched a user-generated content service in 2001. I, 4 years before YouTube. And we shut it down because Sony wasn't willing to eat the losses. And so I've been a believer in user generated content for over 25 years. And I don't see a diminishment in user generated content. All I've seen is an exponential explosion of that and higher percentage of people's viewing time taken up by that. Right. If you go to, I think the guy who read this really right was Ready Player One. In Ready Player One, he projected this future, and there was only a handful of applications that existed in his kind of distant future from our present, and YouTube was one of them. And he viewed everybody using YouTube as a kind of mass communication platform in a way that I think is not going away. Right? On some level, I could make the case that YouTube will swallow Google.
Yeah, or already
and
has.
that and that what Google evolves to is this giant platform that enables you to create video and a giant platform to distribute that video. And
Well, with
that,
ads wrapped around it.
of course,
Yeah.
they will exquisitely monetize it the way they do now. But I see us going through a phase of a lot of really bad content, and then the medium evolving, and then I see thousands, if not millions, of storytellers basically creating higher value content than exists today. That's my so look. I'm an optimistic person, but I also have seen this play out in user generated content before. User generated. I mean, look at the depth of what people share and how many of them share versus 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and project that out 10 or 20 years to the future. How many thousands and thousands of people in India would like to create their own musicals and post them and share them? And that's going to be possible for them. And then some of those people will actually be really talented. Most of them won't be, but some of them will be.
I think it's a question of whether or not talent will be the thing that rises above the noise, or whether or not the checkbook will be able to buy the front of the line. And
I think both will be true. I think both are true now,
yeah,
right? I mean, I think that's a whole other thing about, okay, the income inequality and the bifurcation of experience and then checkbook's ability to buy all sorts of things today is different than it was, you know. So I think the checkbook will be able to buy the front of the line, but talent still prevails. That that
from your lips to God's ears.
I I you see it in all sorts of mediums around the world, and if you look at more level playing fields, if you look at athletics, right, there's talent prevailing. You know, the National Basketball Association is really the global basketball association already today. It wasn't when we were kids, and it wasn't even when we were young adults. But today, your chance of making it to the NBA from Serbia are just as good as they are from Indiana, if not better. Right? Talent prevails.
And football, which we still
Yeah,
call soccer.
yeah. I
Uh,
mean, look at that. Look at that global cultural phenomenon that just happened here in the United States. The global cultural phenomenon. And wasn't that a beautiful thing? Look at how global culture overcame all of the crap that is going on. And even though the United States, was knocked out early on, relatively speaking, in kind of the matches that mattered, the U.S. audience was there and cared and cared. Right? Talent prevailed.
I know a bunch of people that went to matches, but I was not paying that ticket price. Thank you very much.
Well, I hear you, right? So So money bought its way to the front of the line, as you said, but talent still prevailed.
All right. Based on your endorsement, I'm probably going to cave and see the Odyssey and something other than IMAX. And I have not yet seen Spider-Man, and so that may be my next 2 weekends.
All right, there you go.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Take care.